meetings of international excellence within the framework of the project Valencia International Campus of Excellence. Today's meeting has been organized by the Generalitat Valenciana, our regional government, and the University of Valencia as a part of our research collaboration with the Harvard University at the Campus of International Excellence. I wish to thank to both institutions for giving us the opportunity to receive Professor Donna Hicks as a part of our Campus of Excellence project. I also wish to express my gratitude to Professor Hicks for her willingness to take part in today's meeting of excellence about conflict and human dignity. I also like to thank those that have made this meeting possible, my friend Professor Manuel Guillén and the Institute for Communications and Ethics in Organization of the University of Valencia. I hope that the cooperation between the Harvard University and the University of Valencia will promote lines of research on conflict resolution. The International Campus of Excellence is a project launched by the Ministry of Education that aims to promote international excellence in the metropolitan area of Valencia. The International Campus of Excellence has a number of research microclusters that identify emerging research groups and encourages cooperation between different disciplines. The Faculty of Economics of the University of Valencia is actively involved in the research activities of the Campus of International Excellence. Our faculty is important for the Campus of Excellence, not only from a quantitative point of view. We have around 9,000 students and 400 researchers, but more importantly in terms of quality. Among the institutions in the field of economics in Spain, our faculty ranks the second in terms of number of publications. And in the field of economic and business, our university is among the top 200 higher education institutions in the Shanghai ranking. And 4 of our researchers are among the 10 most cited in Spain within the field of economics. The meeting of excellence organized by Campus of International Excellence are urgently awaited at the faculty as they allow our lecturers and students to gain into contact with researchers of highest level. Among our keynote speakers at the previous meetings, we have had the pleasure to receive Nobel Prize winners for economics, such as Professor Christopher Pisarides, Eric Mastin, or Finn Kinlan. Today we have the presence of a leading researcher, Professor Donna Hicks from Harvard University, who is an expert in conflict resolution. In today's conference, Professor Hicks will offer us some key pointers to tackle conflict resolution from a perspective of an unconditional respect for human dignity. I don't wish to expand upon her wide-ranging experience, as this will be more readily provided by Professor Manuel Guillén. At this stage, I only wish to point out that Professor Hicks has over 20 years' experience as a mediator in conflicts as the Middle East, Colombia, Cuba, or Northern Ireland, among others. I would also like to mention that Professor Hicks is a member of the Academic Council of IECO, associated with the University of Valencia, which we consider an honor. At this stage, I would like to give the floor to Professor Manuel Guillén to present our key speaker. Professor Hicks, a very warm welcome to the Faculty of Economics of the University of Valencia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dean of the School of Economics, my friend, I feel like I'm among friends. The new dean of the school, he was just recently elected, so congratulations, by the way. Probably the students, some of them still don't know. So Jose Manuel, thank you for being here. I know you're quite busy, for supporting this activity. And thank you to the University of Valencia, but especially to this school, the Faculty of Economics, and you representing the house. This is our house for the professor and the students. And today's event is basically a meeting of students with the professor, but with a special professor. We have very good professors in this school, as you probably are just right now experiencing. But having a professor from the Harvard University is not common in this campus. So we, as Jose Manuel said, we have Nobel Prizes and a lot of important people, and we try to bring all these people. But someone from the University of Harvard coming for a week to Valencia and spending part of the morning teaching the students and graduate students, by the way, some of my students are here. I'm glad you're here. This is kind of amazing. This is a real honor. So I'd like to say thank you, and I said first to the dean of the school, but basically to the professor, this special professor that we will have here today. We have here today, Donna. I'll talk about Donna for a minute, and then we will have this, we will enjoy with Donna. Yesterday I had to introduce Donna also to a big group of business people. And I said that she is a brilliant researcher, an amazing professor, and a great person. And I thought, why should I say something different today? Because it's the same woman. And she's great. And at the end of yesterday's presentation, everybody said, it's true. So you will see, she's doing research, as Jose Manuel said, he's doing research for more than, nearly 30 years of research in international conflict resolution. Thoughtful research that is different from many other kind of research. And then it's not only that, this is a researcher, but that, as a professor, as you would see now, she's really good teaching, but also she's involved in real problems. She's been trying to help to solve conflict resolution in those regions in which you have the highest problems right now. Like at this moment, she was, a few days ago, weeks ago, she was in Rome helping with the Syrian problem right now we have in Europe. But she's been in Colombia, and so anyway, I was saying she's a great person, and that's what I want to finish my presentation. I want to say that she's a great person, and a way you will see why, but being generous to be here. She's really busy. She just came from another country, she's flying to another country. She's never in Boston. We had a lot of meetings there when we worked together there, and she's always kind of anywhere, but not in Boston. So I'm so happy she's with us here today. It's generosity, but also you will see that he's a friend of her friends. She's here because she believed that researchers at the IECO Institute, the Institute for Ethics in Communication Organization, belonging to the university, but it's basically connected with this faculty. This institute is part of Harvard, and the project we have there, research project. So again, I want to say, as a good friend, thank you very much for coming and for being here today. Thank you.
Well, Manuel, and thank you also for your very kind introduction. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your coming. And you're now my new friend. Now you're my new friend. Manuel has been my friend for 3-4 years now almost. And when Manuel invited me to come to Valencia, and he said he had all this exciting talks that I was going to give, and I can't say no to this guy. It's very difficult. He's very persuasive. Those of you who are his students, you know what I mean, right? Yes, you know what I mean. Is this okay? It's sounding a little tinny. Is it all right? Yeah. So, okay, please. Yeah. All right, so, and it's also wonderful to be in Valencia. I've never been here before, and as I was saying last night, coming here and exploring the city and seeing all of the beauty and the history and the the modernization also of the city, I feel like a little kid, seeing something for the first time. So it's been a real joy to get to know not only you, all of you who live here and who are being educated here, but it's also a joy to get to know your city, which I think has great dignity, by the way. So why dignity? What I'd like to do is answer that question for you, and then why after 20, actually it's almost like 30 years now that I've been doing this work, believe it or not, and after all this time, why did I decide to choose dignity? Should I move out of the way here? Is this blocking? Should I do that? Is it okay? Over there? Yeah. So why? Well, I better wait. So I've worked in all these conflicts all over the world, and also not just international conflicts, but also conflicts in my own country, conflicts between the United States and Cuba, and other more internal domestic conflicts. And it didn't matter where I was trying to mediate these conflicts, trying to bring parties together in order to peacefully resolve these conflicts. But the problem was that even though there were obvious answers to these dilemmas about how to resolve these conflicts, it was really clear that somebody, especially from the outside, could come in and say, this is what you have to do. It's so clear to me. as a mediator, not emotionally involved in these conflicts, I could see very clear paths out of it. But the parties they really struggled. They really, really struggled, including my own country with Cuba. There was a huge struggle around letting go of past, well, let's call them indignities. And I recognized very early on that these conflicts weren't just about the politics. They weren't just about, trying to divide up the land or trying to, lift an embargo and recognize a government, as was the case in the US and Cuba. But the conflicts had this deeper, more human dimension to them. The conflicts were, they were all very similar in the sense that these deeper emotional issues were constantly getting in the way of these very smart and capable people. It was getting in the way of their ability to sign on to an agreement. And it just, it was really a sad situation for me to see that how much these people were struggling to try to, because they were really committed to trying to find peace in their countries. It's not like they were, really looking to destroy the other side. They wanted peace more than anything, but they couldn't get to it. And so finally, after all these years, maybe 15 years of watching and observing these parties, I recognized that, that dignity was playing a big role here. And yet, it wasn't being discussed. What they were discussing were the politics. They were discussing borders, they were discussing land distribution, they were discussing power sharing arrangements. And I thought, after a while, I said, to my colleagues, I said, it's these emotional undercurrents that are causing the problems in not being able to resolve these conflicts. And I thought, at one point I had this big idea, this big flash of insight that, maybe what would we could use the language of dignity to talk about these emotional issues, because frankly, I don't know about Spain, but in other parts of the world, including the United States, important, elite people don't like talking about emotions. They just don't. And they'd rather talk about the politics. And people would say to me, oh, this conflict is not about anything emotional, it's about the politics. So I would, and of course, to ask these high-powered people to talk about a time when they were emotionally wounded by the other side, it's impossible. So this was, and they had this insight about, well, wait a minute, this is really about people's dignity. This is really about how people are being treated so badly by the other side, and no recognition whatsoever of the impact, right? The impact of being treated as if you don't matter. And so, long story short, I think I went on a little bit too long with this point last night, but long story short, what I realized was if I asked people in these conflicts to talk about their emotional experiences, they would never say anything. But when I framed it a different way, and I said, please, I said, talk about, we're going to have an opportunity to talk about ways in which you feel that your dignity was violated in this conflict. Well, you wouldn't believe how that question, that simple question, tell me about a time when your dignity was violated, how it opened doors. People were ready to talk because it was something about, the word dignity. It's a beautiful word, right? It's a beautiful word. And people know it. They know what I'm talking about at a gut level, at a deep soul level. And I'm sure each and every one of you in this room is also, knows exactly what I mean when I say dignity, but I'm going to explain that in a minute. But we're all experts on dignity. We're all experts in knowing when we're being treated well. We know what that feels like. We know that. But we also know it doesn't take us but a little fraction of a second to recognize when somebody's treating us badly. We have a very low threshold for detecting dignity violations, very low threshold. And so that's the issue that I'm going to be sharing with you. All my research and everything that I've learned in the past, these past couple of decades about the important role dignity plays in all our lives. And this futurist, this guy John Nesbitt, he's the one who I came across this several years ago, and he said that the most exciting breakthroughs of the 21st century aren't going to occur in technology, but in our understanding of what it means to be human. And I can tell you that this issue of dignity is a universal human issue. It's not just about Israelis or Palestinians or North Americans or South Americans. This is an issue that affects every single human being, everybody. And I call it a universal issue. And we better well understand it. If it's really true that that each and every one of us reacts in predictable ways when our dignity is honored and our dignity is violated, we better understand what those circumstances are. We better learn that. And so I think what the case that I'm going to try to make with you here for the next 20 minutes or so is I'm trying to convince you that we all have to pay attention. Every single one of us has to pay attention to this critical issue of dignity and learn and take the effort to learn how to actually honor each other's dignity, how to honor our own dignity. And I've worked in the corporate world with this. It's funny, I was just one day sitting in my office doing my work, and I get a call from this big corporation, and they heard about the dignity approach to conflict resolution that I was developing, and they wanted me to come and resolve some internal conflicts within the business, in their business. And I'm telling you, it was so interesting because the dynamics that I experienced in the business world were exactly the same dynamics that I experienced in international conflict. The human reaction to having your dignity violated was the same. And it's the same wherever I take this. It's the same in healthcare, it's the same in education. It's wherever human beings come into contact with one another. This is what happens. There are always dignity issues. So, okay, what is dignity? Tell me what you think. What words come to mind? Anybody, just shout it out. Yes?
Respect.
Mm-hmm. See, Manuel, this always comes up first. Right. Yes, thank you. What else? And what other words come to mind? Yes?
Creation of
Freedom.
Creation.
What's privation? What's that?
Freedom or
Oh.
preventing
Oh, but dignity is so it's indignity that's lack of freedom, right? Okay, okay. So freedom, yes, right? Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, that's usually another one. Everybody says that one, pride. Well, you get the idea, right? There's a sense that our dignity is, there's some aspect of dignity that I think, my simple definition of this is really that our dignity is about our inherent, inborn value and worth. That each and every human being is born valuable and is born worthy. But there's another piece to it. Even though we're born valuable and worthy, we're born vulnerable. Do you know that word, vulnerable, to having that value injured? Just like our bodies, we're vulnerable to physical injuries, but we're also vulnerable to having our dignity violated. And so if you have any doubt, imagine about that simple definition. Here's a little newborn. And is there any question how valuable this little one is? Would we say ever that this, oh no, here's a child that's not valuable, we're going to throw it away, right? This child is not only valuable, but I would say invaluable, priceless, and irreplaceable. This is it. We get one chance. This life is not a dress rehearsal. We get one chance at this life. And so, I show this to people, and I ask them, why? What happens? We see the value of every human being with these little babies. It's really easy. We don't even think about it. We're so happy when they're born. But then they grow up, right? They grow up. And we lose sight of this preciousness. So my goal, actually, is to try to get us all back to seeing each other, turning and looking at your partner, the person sitting next to you, and seeing this preciousness. That is the goal of the work, because we've lost it. We've lost our deep understanding of everybody's value. Are you looking at him and saying how valuable he is? Very good. Thank you. Okay, so that's the baseline. My understanding of dignity is that we're all born worthy. We don't have to do a thing. We don't have to do anything in order to have dignity. Now, we may all be born with dignity, but we're not born knowing how to act like it. So we have to learn what it means to act in a dignified way. It does not come naturally. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We are very good at treating each other badly. It almost comes as a knee-jerk reaction. If somebody threatens us, we can respond in the most devastating ways to other people. And this is what these conflicts are about. One threat leads to another, and there's an escalation of dignity violations that it's a downward spiral. Okay, so I wanted to say that I think that dignity is our birthright, but respect, on the other hand, I think respect is different. I don't think that it is a birthright. I think respect is something that has to be earned. So when the parties in the Middle East say, "I demand respect," they're really adamant. You have to treat me with respect. I think they're mistaken, because I think what they really want to say is, please treat me with dignity. Treat me as a valuable human being. You see the difference between one being earned, and if I say, I really respect you for all the work that you've done, for your contribution to society, and I want to say that because I admire the person for what he or she has done. So I think respect needs to be earned. Now let me say I want to share with you two building blocks with the dignity model, and we're going to end with showing how these things apply in the business world, in your lives. So the first thing I wanted to share with you is some research that I found when I was writing this book about dignity, and the research was really quite. It just changed my world. It changed the way I understood dignity. Now here's what happened. So these researchers, they're neuroscientists. They do brain scans of people. They put them in these scanning machines, and then they create scenarios and watch how the brain reacts, what parts of the brain light up. So for example, when there's a scenario involving a physical injury, somebody breaks his arm, then it shows up, the brain, a part of the brain that lights up is the most ancient part of our emotion center. So it's deeply emotionally felt, right? You know what it feels like, it hurts, right? We say, ouch, we cry when we break a bone. Or even if somebody just punches us, it's hurtful. Now here's the remarkable part. What they found was that when dignity was violated, when someone treated you badly, when someone harmed your dignity, guess what? It shows up in the same part of the brain, exactly the same area as a physical wound. Now think about that for a minute. That means that the brain doesn't know the difference between somebody treating you badly, embarrassing you, humiliating you, right? Treating you as less than, and a physical wound. But think about this. What happens when you break an arm? What's the first thing you do? Yes, you cry. It hurts, right? And then, well, the next thing we might do is, we might get rushed to the hospital. We'll go into an emergency room. It gets all nicely taken care of. You get this beautiful cast, and everybody feels sorry for you, right? Oh, you poor thing, you broke an arm. But guess what happens when you have your dignity violated? There's no emergency room to go to. There's no, at home we have something called 911, the emergency telephone call. You probably have a similar one here, right? And in fact, it's embarrassing. It's even embarrassing to admit that you've had your dignity violated. It's too humiliating. So this is what happens. The brain doesn't know the difference. You experience these two things in the same way. The hurt is the same, yet one gets all kinds of attention, and the other we don't even want to acknowledge. So you see the problem here? I take this data, this research finding into my work with business in the corporate environments, And because they often say, oh, you know, this psychological stuff, Donna, this stuff about dignity, you know, it's nice, but we're really interested in quantitative analysis. We want the hard data. And I say, okay, you want the hard data? I'll show you the hard data. This is what's happening with human beings when they're not being treated well. It feels just like as painful as a physical injury. And here's the other thing. Last night somebody brought up this point that I think that a wound to your dignity is even more painful and more debilitating than a physical wound, because you don't get humiliated by a physical wound, right? You don't feel embarrassed, you don't feel less than. So this is why I'm bringing this to you here, because I think this is such an urgent issue, that we understand this about dignity, and that we understand how to treat each other in a way to avoid this kind of terrible, hurtful reactions in our relationships. And there's no better place than the workplace to really try to integrate this. Because think about how much time we spend in our jobs, right? Or even in education. Think about how much time you spend here learning and, you know, and hopefully you have a really wonderful, dignified environment here. Because the other thing is that when people feel their dignity is being threatened, learning stops. It shuts down doors to learning. There's a lot of research that shows this. So learning institutions really need to be fully aware of all of the dangers of dignity and the power to actually make students feel great, or make you feel great in the workplace. We have the capacity to do both. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to share with you was some work by Nelson Mandela. I had done some television programs with Desmond Tutu in Northern Ireland a few years back, and I was really involved in writing my book, and he said, you know, if you want to understand dignity, you have to read Nelson Mandela's autobiography. So I thought, oh, that's interesting, and he said, I'm not going to say anything, I just want you to read it. And what was so interesting about that, his autobiography, was he was describing what it was like to go into prison, because he spent 27 years in South Africa in this horrible prison in Robben Island. And so what was astonishing about that was that he said that he realized when he got into prison that the very first day, they had to figure out, he and his colleagues had to figure out what the guards were up to, how the guards were going to treat them. Because they figured, well, if we could figure out that, maybe we can learn to survive in this horrible situation. Well, it said it didn't take, you know, about 20 minutes to figure out what the guards were up to. And what they were up to was they tried to strip the political prisoners of their dignity. That's what they wanted. They wanted to make them feel like dirt. And so Mandela says, no, nobody's going to win that battle over my dignity, because I'm the only one who has power over my dignity. My dignity is in my hands only. People can assault my dignity, they can trample upon it, but at the end of the day, I'm the one who's in charge of my dignity. And you know, that was like, another lightning bolt goes off for me, because I did believe that somebody else had the power to strip us of our dignity. That was the big change and transformation in my thinking about this issue. But this is, if you think about it, you think about the power that's behind this concept. Because if you know that you are worthy no matter what, and that nobody can take your dignity away from you, even if you're treated badly, that is the most empowering source of self-knowledge. And what happens to so many of us, I mean, I spent many of my early years thinking that I wasn't worthy. And I'm sure there's probably many of you in this room probably have challenged your own sense of worth as well. But once you get this and you firmly have this implanted in your consciousness, that I'm worthy no matter what, then we can basically get through anything. It's a source of resilience. We can bounce back really powerfully when we know, okay, somebody injured my dignity and it hurts very much. And we need to, you know, do the healing work that's necessary to take care of it. But at the end of the day, we are the masters of our fate. We are the ones who are in charge of our dignity. Oh my gosh, that just made me so happy. And the other thing is, not only knowing that, if we, each and every one of us knows that, I think it's a tremendous source of humility. Because not only do we know that about ourselves, but if we know that each and every person has that same dignity, then we don't think of ourselves as this big grandiose person. We know we are just equally as dignified as everybody else in this room. So in the Mandela way, I call it Mandela consciousness, he knows that, and he knew, and he gave us this incredible gift of this knowledge, I think. And he knew that not only is my dignity in my hands, but everybody else has it too. And when we lose sight of that, about other people's dignity, that's when the conflicts really start, right? But here's the other thing. My experience is that many people who feel that their dignity that has been lost or is not really intact, that's when we can attack other people. So it's so important for us to locate our dignity right deep inside of us. And I finally want to say one last thing about dignity before I get into some really concrete things about what dignity is, and then we're almost done here. But I think dignity at the end of the day is about three things: connection, connection, and connection. Okay, so what are those three connections? The first connection is the Mandela consciousness. Having our connection to our own dignity and knowing it deep in our soul that we have dignity. And the third connection is understanding the connection to the dignity of the other. If I have dignity, so does everybody else who's a human being. So connecting to the dignity of others. And the third connection is something we don't talk about all that often, but it's a connection to something greater than who we are. Because if we just get stuck in our own dignity, and even in the dignity of others, and don't have a concept that there's something so much bigger out there that you want to work toward, let's say you're, religious peoples like to think about the connection to a higher power. It doesn't even have to be that big. It can be a connection to some purpose that you have. Like you want to be a really good doctor, or you want to be a really good CEO, or you want to run an organization that has a lot of dignity in it. That's something bigger than yourself, all right? So three connections, and here's the thing. We get caught in self-absorption if we only understand our own dignity. We become little narcissists, right? So we need these other three connections to other people's dignity and to something greater than ourselves. And if we have that, usually we're very happy people. But if you break any one of those connections, that's where suffering starts. So there you go. Now here are some very oh, I have it today. Oh, yippee! So this is a picture of Nelson Mandela, a guy who survived 27 years in a maximum security prison. Look at this face. Does this guy look like somebody who was tortured? And look at him. Look how resilient. I just love that photograph. You know, whenever I feel depressed or something, I just pop out that photograph and take a look. Say, look what this man overcame in his life. Look what he did. And look at the lessons that he taught us. So fantastic, isn't it? So, the elements of dignity. I came up with these elements of dignity, interviewing people all over the world, and I found patterns. People told stories to me about ways they thought their dignity had been violated, ways they thought their dignity had been honored, and of course, being honored and being violated, they're the two sides of one coin. So here are the patterns. Everybody wanted to have their identity accepted, no matter who they were. And of course, when they feel their identity is not accepted due to some, discrimination about their race, their religion, their ethnicity, right? Then you have some real problems. And recognition, we all want to be recognized for our unique qualities and our way of life. When we don't get that recognition, well, then, conflicts start brewing. Acknowledgement is the same thing. Let's say you had a really bad experience, you had a really bad conflict with somebody, and nobody was even talking about it. Nobody even said a word. We crave acknowledgement when something has happened to us where we feel like we've been violated. And by the way, these are human, remember, these are about human beings. This is not about any one particular group. These are common human reactions to having our dignity violated. We all want to be included, right? We love it when we feel like we're a part of something. There's nothing more awful. And just remember when you first came to the university and you didn't know anybody perhaps, and you felt so alienated, and how great it was when someone came and you became friends, or you joined a club, or you joined an organization. Human beings love to do that. We love that sense of belonging. And safety, safety is, the physical safety is obvious, but I'm not talking about physical safety here as much as I'm talking about feeling safe to be who you are in an environment, feeling psychologically safe to speak up when something bad has happened to you. In the corporate world, when I did my interviews with people, trying to find out where the dignity violations were, this was the biggest element that they felt was violated, that the employees didn't feel safe to speak up to their bosses when the bosses were violating their dignity. They felt, oh my gosh, are you kidding? I can't speak up to my boss. That would be career suicide. I need my job. I need that promotion. So there's this, hierarchical problem where people don't feel safe to discuss and bring up these issues. Instead, they feel terrified. So safety, the psychological safety is enormous in the business world. And fairness, of course, we all have a deep sense of when we're not being treated fairly. Kids even know this. Kids get this when they're not being treated fairly. And independence, so you were talking, who was it, the woman who was talking about independence for dignity? Wasn't it you? Yes. No, who was it? Somebody. Who was it who was talking about the disruption of independence, freedom? Well, yeah, okay, I thought it was you. So we all want that sense of freedom. When someone starts restricting our freedom, we are not happy people. And you can see the implications for international conflict, but it's exactly the same in the workplace. If we feel like we're being micromanaged all the time, and we're not being, not able to make our own decisions, you got a boss hovering over you. Understanding, well, this is obvious. We all want to be understood, and we feel very bad when someone accuses us of doing something that we didn't do. And we say, well, you don't understand what happened. Let me tell you what happened. So understanding is big. Benefit of the doubt. Treat people as if they're trustworthy. Treat people as if they're trustworthy, because when you approach someone and you have in your mind that this person is not trustworthy, and here's another bit of research that I found, that we have these what are called mirror neurons in our brain that we can sense. We have this capacity to sense what's going on in the minds of other people. You know about this stuff? This is really interesting, isn't it? So if you go into an interaction with someone and say to yourself, oh God, this guy is not trustworthy, or this woman is not trustworthy, I better hold back. Well, we can pick up on that. So here's what the research says, that when you approach somebody as if they are trustworthy, guess what happens? They behave as if they're trustworthy. Right? So we have so much power. And this is the thing I also wanted to explain to you. We have so much power to affect things in a positive way. We haven't even begun to tap into it. I swear. We are capable of so much more. If we learn this, and if we use these as guidelines for our relationships, especially when we're in positions of power, like a dean or a CEO of a company or a professor, or all those of us who are in leadership positions, in companies or in education, wherever it is, if we know, because we have the power to set the tone in an organization. And if we set the tone where everybody's dignity is being honored, and we want that, and we create policy that ensures that everybody's dignity is going to be honored in your workplace, you would be so surprised. You get really happy people. You get really, really happy students, happy employees, happy family members. So it is imperative for us. This is an urgent issue. Because by the way, people are suffering all over the world from this dignity stuff. And it's not just these major conflicts I'm talking about. I'm talking about these everyday dignity violations that take place wherever human beings cluster. So, you're going to all be ordained as dignity ambassadors before I finish today. So we have to make a commitment that we're going to try to do this in our lives and in our relationships. So in the workplace, let me just say one quick thing about this, and I should stop in like a Couple minutes, do you think? What, how long do I have? Because I can go on forever, you know me. Tell me. But we have to have a discussion. Okay. So what happens in a workplace if these elements are not honored, when people feel that their dignity is being violated? Well, you know, in a work environment, the people who are suffering from these dignity violations but don't feel safe enough to speak up and talk about them, they just kind of come into the job and they just put in their time. They punch the clock, you know, in and out. They're not interested in any creative, you know, aspects of their job. They just want to, they're filled with resentment because there's no way that they can talk about what happened when they felt their dignity was being dishonored. And they're angry. There are a lot of angry people. One company that I work for, the employees, the three major unions in this big corporation were so angry with the management. They felt so violated, that their dignity had been so violated. They actually brought the company down. The employees brought the company down. And this is how much power dignity has behind it. And it's the negative power that indignity has behind it too. So let's see here. So why is it important for leadership? Why do we as leaders, because you may be students now, but I promise you, graduating from this prestigious university, you're probably going to be in leadership positions somewhere out there either in Spain or in the world, wherever you find a job. So this is imperative for us, that we understand that there's two kinds of knowledge that leaders have to embody. It's certainly important to have the technical knowledge about your area of expertise. You really need to know that. But all of the data on surveys, when you ask employees what the best leaders are and how they characterize the best leaders, they say they're people who have the technical knowledge but know how to treat human beings. It's this other human knowledge that I was talking about right in the beginning of the talk. We all have to learn how to treat each other in order to bring out, you know, the most creative aspects of each other. And we need to be able to model trust. Because you know what happens in these workplaces when dignity violations go unaddressed, trust breaks down instantly. Because what trust is really about is not trusting that the person isn't going to violate you again and hurt you again. So you're not going to trust somebody who continually violates your dignity and you don't have an opportunity to talk about it. And we need to model this behavior. We need to, because people, those of us in leadership positions, we're being watched all the time. Everybody's looking to us, right, for guidance. They're looking to us to help them through difficult times. And if we don't model this in our jobs and in our leadership positions in our work, we're going to disappoint a lot of our employees. And also modeling dignified relationships. You know, where in school do you learn how to be in relationship with somebody? What kind of behaviors do you need to learn that helps you develop a really strong relationship? I'm talking about relationships in the workplace, but this is very similar to what you need in your marriage, you know, in your family. And remember, this is about human beings. This isn't about specific people in different cultures. This is about all of us. And we want to help people become the best versions of themselves. So you're going to be leaders, you're going to be out there, you might as well make life a little easier for everybody. Make them feel valued, make them feel as though they're special and they have a unique contribution to your work environment. And you also want to help them become more emotionally skilled, because I'm telling you, these dignity issues, they are not an intellectual matter. They're all emotional problems when they have problems with dignity. So we can become very skilled if we learn about dignity. And the other thing that I think we have to know, and I didn't put this up here, but one thing we have to know, I think I alluded to it earlier, that we have such power to affect other people. We can make people feel really good by honoring their dignity in this way. And we can also make people feel miserable in a fraction of a second. Just our tone of voice, right? Just by, you know this, when somebody gives you a sneering look, We all know these things. So you have to ask yourself. I have a friend out in Dublin, in Ireland, the Republic, who told me this story. He said he asks himself every day, how do I want to make people feel? And he checks in the beginning of the day, and then at the end of the day, he says, okay, so how did I do? He says to himself. Did I make people feel great today? Did I honor their dignity today? Or did I do the opposite? Did I make people feel terrible? And so this is what I mean about we have so much power. We have so much power to improve this world that we're all living in these spaces that we're all sharing. And dignity, I'm telling you, it's at the core of it. It's at the core. We all want to be treated as if we're something of value. And when we're dismissed and not, we can be miserable. You know, we can go live our lives in misery until we get this. And here's just a quick thing I'm going to say about conflict in a workplace. So when you have lots of conflict and unaddressed conflicts in the workplace, your dependability quotient goes down. Your employees don't feel like giving any extra energy to you. You don't feel trust decreases, trust is lost. Productivity is at a minimum. They're not engaged in their job. They feel disempowered. All this stuff decreases. And guess what? Profits go down. So this is not an insignificant matter. This issue of dignity, in fact, so here's what, when people feel their dignity is honored, this is what happens. The opposite happens. They're more dependable. They give of themselves. They feel trust in their leadership. They feel productive, and they're engaged, empowered, and lo and behold, profits increase when people feel that their dignity is being honored in their work environment. There's lots of data to show this. So isn't this kind of like it's obvious, right? People say this is common sense, Donna. Well, it is common sense, but putting this into daily practice is another issue. It's harder than it sounds, right? Try it, you know? So if you want to make people feel great, just try honoring those elements of dignity. But if you decide, I don't want to make this guy miserable, this person miserable, just violate one of those elements. Your relationship will break down in a matter of minutes. It doesn't take much to break trust and to break a sense of safety in a relationship. Okay, so wrapping this one up, here's one of my favorite quotes in the entire world. It really sums up the dignity work. Treat people as they want to be, and you help them become what they're capable of being. And I can tell you, we haven't even scratched the surface of what we're capable of. We are capable of so much more, and the environment has to be one where people's dignity is intact. Because we can learn until the day we die if we feel like our dignity is intact and that we're treated as if we're valuable human beings. And the educational environment, we are so lucky that we have students for as long as we do, so that we can make this imprint. We can create this environment for students and for all of us. So, okay, that's it. Thank you.
We have time for any questions.
Oh, I know you're all dignity experts, so come on, tell me about what you think. Anybody, how do you react to somebody in the back?
First of all, thank you by your presentation. It has been very impacting for me, and I'm sure that for all of us, even if we don't all talk. And I come from Colombia, and as you know, the conflict is starting to see light. But anyway, we, or at least many people at Colombia, think that it's very hard to get connected with people which continue to behave in a violent way even when the conflict is going to resolve. I mean, how can you stay in connection with people which is still hurting you?
That's a wonderful question. And what it means to me is that you can't expect people to just let go of all the harm that others have done to them. It's almost humanly impossible. It's really difficult. And so you need, I mean, I've been saying this to all I've worked in Colombia for many, many years. I have colleagues there now that I work with. And one of the things that my colleagues have developed is a process where, let's say you've got some paramilitaries in a community. Let's just say you have a little community where paramilitaries and the guerrillas both really wreaked havoc on the people, right? They killed people, they kidnapped people. And so now what's happening in Colombia is that they're trying to sign a peace agreement. And then what happens to all of these people who have been so harmed, right? And certainly physically harmed, but their dignity has been violated too in these little communities. So my colleagues and I, we've developed a process. You have to do a professional process in order to get people to reconnect with the empathy, to really try to restore empathy. That's really what we're talking about when we're talking about connecting to another's dignity. We want to be able to see them as human beings again, but you need a process, right? You need, a step-by-step process, and you can't expect people to do it without that. You need professionals to come in, and your country has so many of them. You probably don't even know this, but your country has this organization called Aspere, and it's they're schools for reconciliation and forgiveness. And Father Leonel Navarez is the founder of this program. He was up with us at Harvard. He got his Master of Divinity at Harvard and worked with me for many years at trying to develop this process that I'm talking about. He takes people through a 2-week process in the hope that at the end of the process that they can create conditions for forgiveness and reconciliation. But to expect people, everyday people, to just do it on their own, I think it's not realistic at all. So I'm really happy about the resources that are in your country to address this. And UNESCO actually honored Father Navarez by giving them the UNESCO award for educating in this particular area of forgiveness and reconciliation. So you've got very special people there. I'm excited for the post-agreement Colombia, because there are people, many, many people trained to do that work.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
More questions? Here, there's one.
Okay, thank you very much again for your presentation. And do we, as human beings, have the same dignity, or can our deeds reduce the value of who we are?
Okay, so I think that we are all equal in dignity. Every single person has the same dignity. Remember I said, however, that there are things that we can do, there are actions and our behaviors that we can do that earn us respect. So I believe that the baseline is that we all we're equal in dignity, but we might not be equal in status. So for example, we have the dean of the school, or we have someone who has worked very, very hard in your life to get where you are, and you've been recognized as someone who is, no, you have, of course. Of course. And so, but to say, is his dignity any more special than yours? No. But he has earned status, right? You have earned, by your actions and your commitment and your dedication to education, you have earned this honor of being chosen as dean, correct? So you see the difference? But it doesn't mean that he has any right to treat you any less in terms of these elements of dignity. He has to honor your dignity, even though he has a higher status from you. This is why dignity is the one thing that can unite us all, no matter whether we have higher or lower on the hierarchy. Dignity is the one thing where we can see each other as equals. You're Juan, right? Yeah, I remember you from last night. Yeah, thank you for coming again. Yeah. And I also remember what is your name?
David.
Juan also?
David.
David, yeah, because you were helping me with the books yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got so many friends. Yeah. Sorry. I do have a couple of other friends in the audience, yeah. And there's Tomas. Okay, Tanti. So, yeah, anybody else have any comments?
I would like to ask, but then, and also make a comment.
Sure.
I can see now that most of the students, they are undergrads, they started a few weeks ago.
Oh.
So I know that some of you, this is like the first conference. So I will push you to keep asking because I think it's good. But because they are so new in the school,
Sure.
they probably feel embarrassed. But anyway, this is my question.
They need to feel safe to speak up, right?
Right, that's
Yeah,
the point.
exactly.
So it's fine. It's not like this is part of the evaluation system, something like that, or control. No, but my question is basically, we had a meeting yesterday. We were having lunch in a Colegio Mayor, in a university residence here in Valencia. And it was kind of an informal meeting, having lunch and then a get-together. And then someone was asking Donna, and I want to repeat the question at some point, or it sound in a different way, but what would you say, Donna, to these students, specifically as the students that they just arrived to the university a few weeks ago? How can they help each other? Not just the professor, because it was great for leaders, but they are not still leaders, but they are potential leaders, and in fact, everyone is a leader. Everyone is influencing someone else's behavior in a free way. They are leaders already. So what would you say to students that they just started to make sure that it works during the year? As a student
Make
in
sure
the classroom, that it works. The dignity, atmosphere, and culture, it was during the year in the classroom and among them. And they really increase this among them while they are students.
Well, I'll bet they could answer this question, but what I would say is that I think it's important to recognize how much power you have, as I said earlier, to make somebody feel really good. If you see someone sitting by himself or sitting by herself, and you go over and you say, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee, or let's go, do something together. If you recognize, if you have in your mind all of these elements of dignity, and you see that somebody might be feeling left out or excluded, reach out, right? Reach out. Or if you see someone not feeling safe in an environment, not willing to speak up, just go try to connect with that person. And recognize that you have so much power to make that person feel better, right? And yourself included. Let's just say that you're having a hard time, that you're feeling a little bit out on the margins for whatever reason. Go to ask one of your classmates for help. Say, hey, look, this is a little bit new to me, and I'm feeling a little bit new to the situation. How are you feeling, right? Is this the same for you? And just connect. Because the worst thing to do is to feel isolated, like you can't go talk to anybody. And of course, you've got this professor here who his doors are always open, of course. But yeah, don't be afraid to reach out, and don't be afraid to reach out to people who are also, you might sense, are having a little bit of a hard time.
More questions?
Somebody had one here. Did you have one? No, somebody took the mic. Oh yeah, back there. Okay. A brave soul. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. So, thank you very much, because now I actually have the opportunity to ask someone that, because I just asked myself this morning why it is so difficult for some people to treat each other with dignity, especially now that we have refugee problem. I don't really see it that way, but we have a lot of refugees in Europe, and especially I'm German, so in Germany it's discussed a lot, especially because we had some problems with people from Germany not showing the refugees any dignity, and not treating them with any dignity. So this morning I just read I don't know if you know the Facebook website Humans of New York.
No.
It's a guy who's he started with interviewing people in New York, taking pictures, and then just writing down what they said and their story. What he did then is he went to Eastern Europe and to Iraq and like more east-south, and then interviewed people. So what he's doing now, he's interviewing refugees who are coming from Syria and Afghanistan.
Right.
And he's interviewing them while they, when they already had the journey from Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq. So people telling their stories, which is really, really sad. So sometimes I'm just sitting there, I'm like, I can't believe that actually something like that happens in our world.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that the problem that we have, like people not treating other people with dignity, is like a lack of information or a lack of knowledge? Because like for me, like reading this, like reading someone got dragged out of their house because like of ISIS fighters, like just because he's shaved, and then people taking the journey like to Europe, like all the money, all the things they had to go through, and then they come to a country where they actually thought they would be safe.
Safer, yeah.
And then you have actually like very weird people who putting buildings on fire because they don't want refugees in the country. What do you think is like the problem there? Because I don't understand it. I'm just like, I'm asking myself, like, I cannot understand it because
no, it's
everyone
really
deserves it.
Yeah, it's a tragic situation, and as Manuel earlier said, that a few weeks back I was in Rome working with Syrian activists and human rights lawyers and community leaders and journalists. We brought 30 people from Syria to this little town of Viterbo. Some of you may know of that little town outside of Rome. And we were trying to train them in dignity leadership training for one, but also we were training them to be able to record and stories so that people from the outside world, like us, you know, in Europe and in the US and different parts of the West, understood what was happening. Because unfortunately, you know, human beings are inherently xenophobic, right? I mean, this is just part of our legacy. We come into the world with this us and them mentality, and we have to fight it. Let me just tell you, we have to fight it. But what we discovered was, and you know, I had never met Syrians before this project, and these people were just like us, right? They were educated people. They were concerned about the world. They had this ancient culture. You know, the culture of Syria is one of the oldest cultures in our planet, and we got so connected to them. We understood. We didn't have any differentiation between who we were and what they were. They're just like us, and I think losing that connection to the other, because you do have to fight it sometimes. Because the literature is really clear that we are born with certain xenophobic. You know what I mean by xenophobia? We create this us and them understanding about who we are and the other. So we have to fight it. And the dignity work is exactly the same thing. We have to fight it. Because when we disconnect, as I said, when we disconnect from the dignity of others, not only do they suffer, but we suffer too. Having hatred in your heart is like poison for us. And feeling that resentment about other people, it's like poison. And so I can tell you also that the Syrian people are suffering in a way that I have been all over the world working on these brutal conflicts, and I have never heard such horrific stories as I heard in Viterbo. And we're talking about people like every single one of you, because what happened was in 2011, you know, after the big Arab Spring, all of that fomenting of a sense of hope and freedom, right? For the young people especially. Young people just like you were, if you went to a demonstration in 2011, the Assad regime went out and found you and put you in prison. And so your people, your colleagues in Syria who are your age mates doing exactly what you're doing, getting an education, they went to a rally, they went to a political protest, what do you call them? Yeah, demonstration, thank you. They went to, and for that little reason, that very small reason of, and that should have been part of their rights as a citizen to protest their government. Assad put them in jail, and there are still people rotting in jail from 2011. So back to your original point where, here are all of these refugees flooding Europe, flooding other parts of, the country. And certainly, we have our refugee issues too. I don't even know how to address the scale is so enormous about this issue. And I think it requires some more global, maybe it's a European, Western European policy about how to manage this crisis. But this is a crisis like the world has never seen before. And we are just ill-equipped to handle it. And yesterday there was another very thoughtful student from this residence home that Manuel was talking about, who was saying, look, in Spain, we've got our own problems, right? We've got our problems with unemployment, and if we have a Syrian refugee come here, they're going to take our jobs away. Well, that's a legitimate concern, I think. At the same time, the indignities that the Syrians are facing, we're talking life and death. We're talking life and death. So it's not an either-or situation. We have to figure out how to develop a policy, a humanitarian policy, that is global in its reach. I don't know, maybe a new agency in the UN, something, but it's not effective. The resources that we have now are not working. And it's putting such a strain on all these economies, even in Germany. You're the most welcoming country of all, I think, in Europe, and you're suffering too. So this is a global issue. This isn't just about Germany or Spain or the United States or Syria. This is something that is a global indignity, and we need to develop mechanisms, ways to address it. We're falling short.
Yeah, so I can really recommend Humans of New York. It's very interesting. It's hard
to
read it, but it's very good because if you don't have anyone, you don't know a refugee who can tell you the story. It's really nice good to actually read it. And there's actually, I just saw that there's a program starting in Dresden where I'm studying right now, because they have a really big problem. It's a really big problem over there with refugees. And they actually starting a program where they get refugees to a conference, and they're telling their stories at the conference, and people are joining that.
Yeah, I've got some great videos of stories actually I could have brought, but time is limited.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you, Marta.
Thank you, Marta. Yeah.
Any other question? One more.
Thank you for the conference. It was very inspiring. I think we all noticed in an emotional way. My question was about terrorism. Terrorism nowadays is all over the world, and I think the problem about that is because there are people that think in different ways and they don't agree. And at one point, one group feel hurt, and then that group tried to revenge, so it happens terrorism. And if we act with dignity, it will stop. The terrorism. If we put more dignity, not to revenge, think in the others. Dignity how can help with terrorism, because the conclusion I came is that by dignity we can avoid not only solving, so avoid, and that's.
It's a really interesting question because I don't know if any of you watched my TED Talk, but at the end of my TED Talk, I talked about an organization that was created in the United States after 9/11, after all the death in 9/11. And the company, or the organization, was created to provide the children of the people who died in the towers. So the kids whose parents, mothers and fathers, died in the Twin Towers. And what they did was they contacted me, and I trained all of their facilitators to be able to talk with the young kids, because they were quite young, you know, many of them were, and to help them understand dignity as a way of thinking about terrorism and their own reactions to terrorism. And this one, these were very powerful conversations that these facilitators facilitated for these young victims of terrorism. And at the end, when they learned about dignity, they had learned very similar to this presentation what dignity was and how vulnerable we are to having our dignity violated, and how we can, so easily react in a negative way when our dignity is violated, and so on. So this one young kid I think he was from Pakistan, he said, I've learned this week what the antidote to terrorism is. What's the antidote? Be sure they understand that word. The antidote, you got that? So what the antidote to terrorism is that we need to put more dignity into the world. That's what this young, 12-year-old, what he concluded after learning about dignity. And I think this is really the answer, because we have so much extremism right now. Extremism in politics, extremism in religion, extremism, because I think largely people felt that they have not had any recognition of their identity, of their dignity. And this is how bad I think it is. That when people feel repeatedly that they don't have any recognition for what they've suffered. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to condone terrorism. I think it's appalling, and it's the biggest threat to our global security. At the same time, I think underneath it, you'll probably find, if you dig deep enough in their narrative, you will find ways in which they feel as if they're being treated as less than by Syrian society and the rest of the world. So putting more, and it's education, right? It's about education. This is what this young boy from Pakistan said. We have to teach everybody about dignity and understand how powerful a concept it is. It's like we're playing with fire, right? When we're playing with dignity, we're playing with fire. It can be fire that can be, fireworks and make us feel excited and happy, but it can be fire that turned negatively can burn us up. It can burn up the whole world. So, anyway, one last thing I want to tell you, I keep forgetting. I have this website, and it's declaredignity.com. Write it down, because I want you to all go on it. And I need some signatures from Spain, because it's just an effort. The website I developed with Archbishop Tutu from South Africa, and we tried to just raise consciousness about dignity. And what you do is you sign your name, say, yes, I'm going to commit myself to helping put more dignity in the world. So it's declaredignity.com, all lowercase, declaredignity.com. And I'd love to see your names on there from Spain, so from Valencia especially. So anything else, Manuel?
No, I think that was great. That's the final point. I will ask Jose Manuel to thank you and to say goodbye, but I want to personally say thank you so much. And I guess from my students, I'm also saying thank you from their point of view. So Jose Manuel, please.
The same. Thank you for this wonderful conference. Without doubt, everybody will sign this.
Yeah. I'd be so happy to see your names.
Yes, of course. I will take your advices to encourage the dignity respect in my organization.
Great.
Thank you to Manuel Guillem, the Professor Guillem, for giving us the opportunity of having Professor Hicks here on the course. Thank you very much to all of you and your students and lecturers that are here. It's not easy to fill this room.
Really?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I see all your beautiful faces.